Today we will be reading Ed and Eddie last episode. I am almost done. Alright, we're gonna begin. I'm gonna drink some water real quick. Ed and Eddie, last episode. As me. Ed, and Eddie. Last episode. As you may know, the popular show Ed and Eddie has been running for a long time. However, between October 7th, 23 and October 21st, 23, episode 34 was accidentally released 1 week before it was scheduled to. It was also known that around the office, the primary writer had been sick with flu, and instead of going on to make episode 34, the show was supposed to replay episode 1 at 5 a.m. Eastern. People reported a very disturbing new episode premiering on Cartoon Network. Some children were unfortunate enough to see it. Apparently, the quality of the episode was mediocre when held to regular standards. Animation was choppy, sound was constricted and very muffled. Reports of a line running up and down, similar to a crappy VHS tape, were received. Scenery was described as overwhelmingly dark and depressing, without changing props and other background objects dormantly looking. Characters also behaved oddly. Instead of the normal goofy hijinks-inspired personalities, viewers complained. They seemed extremely agitated, grotesquely hateful towards each other, and constantly about to begin sobbing. After the lines, the protagonist also had a very bad look. Had a very bad lips. No one knows why, but he spoke with a sexual tone, and that further bothered the viewers. I was one of those viewers. The episode began with Eddie walking down the street. I noted that Ed was missing. There was an angular shot coming in front of the two of the show walking towards the viewer. Eddie, was wearing the angry look he does when something goes wrong. His eyes were red around the iris. Ed looked absolutely forlorn and practically dragged behind Eddie, tears in his eyes, which were both lazy and looking in opposite outward direction. Kevin, the serious antagonist, was riding his bike opposite of the Ed towards them. The shot becomes blurry, and low moans were heard coming from the Eds before Kevin hits them, which never happened because the screen went to black. The screen then snapped back, and Kevin was again headed towards Ed. The viewer was so blurry this time. All I saw was a green blob headed towards the yellow one. Again, low moans, only this time it sounded like the microphone was broken and the loud static came, greatly overshadowing the moans. A claymation sequel of WD sleeping in Eddie's bed came up. Honestly, it may just have been the most abrupt, but I jumped and shivered. Waking up and getting out of bed, he moved oddly around the circular room. Fast pitter-patter of footsteps began only audio. The steps sounds were very clear as I was shown a bird's eye of him scampering around the room. There was no visible door. Ed began scooching center like a pictured cat. As he moved wildly around the cell of the room, faster and faster, around the screen began blurring again. The purple rooms began swallowing a now orange blur. In a extremely close-up of Eddie's front door sat an obsolete science for a monetary maddeningly long time, at least 2 minutes, dead silent, in a door next to Jimmy and Sarah had a doctor's of some sort, probably oral. Jimmy obstructed view by a hanging neck, crying out Sarah, tried to comfort him in an unusual warm fashion, and hurt Sarah. Suddenly the door of the room smashes open with a new character, Ventus. His face wasn't shown because it was tall enough to be cut out of the shot. Sarah was escorted out of the room. Jimmy was shown. His headgear was mangled. The front bent upward, stretching his lips. Very high tearing proportions. The front of his gums was trickling blood, and teeth was missing. The disturbing part that he had lost both his arms and legs beforehand, apparently, and sat a some forehand, apparently, and sat up something. I almost cried as I came to the conclusion that the others had beaten them up and bent his headgear. The camera stayed up on his mangled face for a few seconds, still as the picture's silence as ever. Commercials came on. We are instantly assaulted with a very hairy wolf in this darkening shed, twisting the cow repeatedly. The visual loops and gets blurry again as the scene pans out. Naz is reading a magazine on her couch. The quality is now perfect. Eddie is now alone without Ed. The quality declined worse than before, and he is still walking. And now, like the moon somewhat, he smiles and again running. Doors shown again, and we see through Eddie's eyes as he reaches out and opens. His house is nice and bright, but his very badly played violin is blaring. The only audio in the scene as he makes his way through the house. Eddie opens the door to his room. Johnny is shown under Naz's couch cushion as he crawls out in all fours in a comedic way and pops up behind her. So obvious. Thank you. So obvious. I laughed because someone forgot to draw his eyes, and I thought of a mole. Suddenly, I stopped laughing as he started swallowing her head, still in a cartoonish fashion, of course. But this was different. He and she stayed like this until she started kicking and struggling. Johnny held her like this until she wouldn't let. A zoom in on his face revealed extremely small human eyes. Double D was lying on Eddie's floor, no longer in claymation. The camera showed Eddie's house on the remainder of the episode, while 3 minutes in the next program began on the spot. And that's the end of the creepypasta. Let's read this one. This is gonna be a long one. Alright, we'll go for it. Yeah, separate part. I'm gonna get water real quick. I'm back. So this time we're gonna be reading a pretty long creepypasta. A long story. Let's begin. Part 1. I'm gonna tell you a secret, but first you have to promise me you won't laugh. This is still an uncomfortable subject for me, so I'll appreciate you. You'll understand. Do we have a deal? When I was 5 years old, I watched a movie no child should ever see. I don't remember how much about the circumstances of my viewing, other than it was at my house where my family lived, late at night after dark, with the only television providing light. The film was an animated feature and depicted themes of animal cruelty, death, and dismemberment. The scenes were surreal and terrifying, and left a deep impression on me. For years afterwards, the only scenes I could remember clearly was when an evil man was drowning a family of cats in a stream, which I have nightmares about for years afterwards. I remember seeing it earlier in the movie, followed by many more disturbing, surreal scenes. Remember your promise, because this is the part I was talking about. I never told anyone about what I saw, but the name of the movie was well known. The Astro Cat. I suppose I can forgive you if you broke your promise, but I must empathize, emphasize that I'm not joking. I saw a movie that's called The Astro Cat, filled with filled with themes I have described, and it scared me for life. I didn't think about the experience very often, but it was always in the back of my mind in some ways, though I didn't realize it at the time. I know now that it caused me to shy away from animation and children's shows. It, it settled and formed my whole outlook on the trappings of childhood. I found myself racing with dread whenever I had to watch a children's animation school. My childhood was relatively normal otherwise for an introvert anyways, but every once in a while I would think back on that movie and find my inner peace disturbed. It wasn't until maybe third or fourth grade that I started to realize that my experience with the movie had not been typical. I didn't tell anyone, not even my parents, but what I had witnessed in the dark room at age 5. But I eventually figured out on my own that there's nothing horrific about about the version everyone else had watched. I still willing to see it for myself. I figured they had seen what I would have, I would have been able to tell whenever they spoke of the film. Anyone who had anything to say about it seems to consider it either nostalgic or classic or unremarkable. When I was in middle school, I asked my mom if I ever seen the Astro Cat. She said I have one, having stayed up past my bedtime and watching it secretly. She said I seemed strangely disturbed by the film and had never wanted to watch it again as a small child. I asked if I still had it in my house, but she said had been so unafraid. I had so I have been so afraid of the movie that she had thrown it away. It had been a home VHS recording she bought it at a estate sale rather than a retail copy. I finally decided to watch the movie again. I ordered it from the library and watched it on one Saturday. It took me a couple of hours to work out the curves to finally hit play. I find it to be a wonderful film. Immediately, I realized that whatever I remembered seeing at age 5 had nothing to do with the movie. There was no graphic violence, no psychedelic, nothing that should have been that traumatized me as a child. And yet, And yet, what I had seen all those years ago definitely shared elements with this movie. The kids and their mother were dragged in that background, but I instantly recognized the moment leading to this divergent and almost had a flashback of cartoon drawing I had witnessed. I was hoping to find closure, but instead I was more troubled than ever. There was no question in my mind now that I had viewed some awful and perverted version of this classic film. I told one of my friends about it a few days ago. I didn't tell him know how convinced I was of what I had seen as a young child, and said simply relating it as a vague and confused memory like, hey, the other day I saw the Astro Cats. I used to be terrified of that movie because for some reason I thought I saw gore scenes and cats drowning when I watched it at 5 years old. Funny how your memory plays trick on you at that age, isn't it? He told me about the movie. So he explained that it was an animated movie about cats with a similar animation style that contains graphic gore scenes, and it was definitely not for children. But he said maybe I had somehow seen the movie instead of Astro Cat. I streamed and watched Beldia. I saw what my friend meant about the style having the same feel as the Astro Cat, except dark and bloody. But it wasn't as what I had seen. I knew for sure that the 5-year-old me had watched the movie that is the same characters as Astro Cats, and also knew for sure that it had contained bizarre and disturbing scenes not shown in the mainstream version. This whole thing was driving me up the wall, trying to get some kind of closure. I started seeking out and watching old cartoons animation and contain graphic and disturbing elements that would never be included today, such as Watership Down, 1978 version. While those works were interesting and grabbing to their own way, they were recently non-Disney. While other studios may have willing to take such risks as their own works decades ago, the fact that Astro Cats is a Disney property made me sure that the version I had first seen was something I was absolutely not supposed to ever. Part 2. Let go. After a while, a few years passed. In a college, I learned about this internet urban legend called Lost Episodes. People claim to have seen episodes of TV shows or altered versions of movies, usually animated and contain graphic and disturbing content. The episodes or movies was often found in unexpected places, and those claiming to have seen it and often said it mysteriously disappeared, whether due through a VHS tapes. Apparently, to have somewhat self-erased a website going dead immediately after viewing, etc. To be honest, I didn't put that much thought into the validity of those stories, but with my Astro Cats experience still in the back of my mind, I decided to look further into this. I found a YouTube video called Cartoon Geek, who was discussing a certain Lost episode for his 40,000 subscriber special. Oh, okay. After after going through after going through a little bit of gory things and talking about how much his subscribers meant to him and all of that, he began. Now, for those who are new to this channel, I'm basically just a guy obsessed with all things nostalgic and geeky about cartoons and other media. Most of my content is simply reviewing old cartoons and whatnot, usually superhero related. Some, however, I also do a side series on this strange and creepy side of animation. For example, my 20k sub special was a three-part series on Disney and their alleged subliminal message in their film and television. And the videos you're watching now is sort of like the same, sort of like, sort of in that same vein. We're going to take another look at a certain lost episode. For those who don't know, lost episodes are basically this urban legend about TV episodes of TV shows which are were lost in the name implies. Those episodes were said to contain graphics and or disturbing and surreal elements that are generally regarded as material that the public are not meant to see. A few months ago, I covered an alleged lost episode from the 1968 filmation series, The Adventures of Batman. I loved the show as a kid, even though it was a few decades before my time, and there was one episode with a scene where Batman and Robin fall through a trapdoor set by the Joker and slides to their doom. At the end, a slide tunnel was a giant open furnace. Looking at the Joker's face, of course, since this is a kid show, they don't actually slide into the furnace, burn alive. They get out with their gadget. So to recap, in 29, this anonymous internet post started circulating around online about this alleged lost version of this scene, and it's the dynamic duo actually do slides on this furnace burn alive screen and are shown graphically burned to a crisp, followed by surreal and non-linear scenes of grieving friends of Bruce Wayne, and mourning, and funeral service. Now, when I did my first video on this subject, I was honest with you guys. I don't really think there was much credibility to the story. I like to keep an open mind on this story, but there were just certain elements to this post that made me say, okay, this is probably bullshit, but how the tape conveniently erased itself after the anonymous author reviewed it. But since then, I've gotten a lot of comments and emails talking about how allegedly this last episode has been posted online. Naturally, a lot of you have been already saying this is fake, but the topic won the poll for this special. So let's find out. After some preamble something, the video cuts to a later episode at the part where Batman and Robin are sliding down the tunnel towards the furnace, and all of the parts where the two use their belt gathers to get free were removed, and when two were close to the furnace, screen filled with their fire, and the two poor quality played. After that, there were some strange abstract scenes, but all of those seemed to be simply random clips from later episodes with some editing effects thrown at them. Cartoon geek return, okay. So, right off the bat, Batman and Robin dies off screen, which obviously not what happened in the last episode post that was shared around. They basically just used the flames from earlier in the scene and cut them over to make them look like Batman and Robin died, adding in a canned scream effect. As the real scene that followed are just random clips from throughout the show that was various editing tricks applied. I could have done some of that myself. So while that was impressive work, I think it was pretty clear that this was a fan project inspired by an anonymous post. I'm also gonna rate this animation myth as debunked for now. To give some more breakdown and deconstruction of the clips before ending off with some kind of promotional giveaway. What really got my attention, however, was some of the comments. There were at least a few people insisting that one of the last episodes was real and they had seen it with their own eyes. A PM was one of those people I asked. He had really seen the episode, and about the circumstance, he responded with the hour. Yeah, I was at summer school, and during recess, I snuck off to the school library back room to be alone. I put a VHS of the cartoon that was there and saw it. Honestly, I wasn't really disturbed back then since my parents let me watch rated R horror movies and stuff like that and laugh out loud. But yeah, man, this thing is real. I asked if he knew any information about the other supposed lost episodes phenomena, but she said she did not know. I did some research of my own. There was a few lost episode stories floating around on the internet, mostly about children's shows to be honest. Not many of them seemed all that credible. Still, I strongly felt that there was something real here behind all the establishment and fictionalization. I decided to see if there were any such stories surrounding the astral facts. My searches for disturbing content in the movie returned. Nothing but the expected her, or this one scene in the astral cats thoroughly scared me for life as a kid. Stuff or more information about the Lilia movie, I tried reaching out for some of the credited animators, writers, some crew members, sharing the contents of my email so that the cast has wide of a net as possible. For example, some of the emails focus on disturbing content that may have been cut out, while others ask more general, about alternative versions or cut scenes. I also expanded my web researches. I used all of the search engine tricks I could find and started using obscure foreign language engines. After a few months with no information and no responses from my zero inquiries, I started to think that maybe I should just forget about this whole thing. Maybe my real memories to watch the Astro Cat had merged with the nightmares I had to create my present memory, and maybe repeating those memories to myself so many times during my childhood had falsely convinced me of their reality. I was about to consign to their newfound self-closure, but I found something during one of my foreign language searches. There's a thread on a Chinese message board. The OP, the OP had a JPEG image, and the text was roughly translated to Showcat movie. If I had one copy dropped and still all over my computer, I would have the image stashed away, and I hope I had to pass off my childhood experiences as just a dramatic nightmare and just had to stick in my head longer than it should have. That was a frame from whatever twisted version of the Astrocat I had seen, and while I haven't actually remembered this particular still until I find this message board, the instant I saw it, I remembered the clip, and more memories started flooding back. Still vague but vivid, and definitely real. I was now more firmly convinced than I have ever been before, and the violent version of the movie was real. The image was the black kitten, Brazil, 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 years was, no, I can't pronounce the cat name, Briz, Burlos, 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 whatever. His face nearly filled the frame, and his eyes were wide and terrified, red veins bulging, his spurs stained up as he charged with electricity. The picture itself wasn't more inherently disturbing with a grotesque fan art you could find at all kinds of different shows and movies. But unlike those other images, I know this one had a genuinely sinister story to some kinds of outcomes behind it. As such, it's haunted me like no other image had before. Those were only a couple of replies on the thread, but both of which were short and neither of which provided any more information about the image. I used Google Translate to try to ask POP for more information, but never received a response. I performed a reverse search image search of the file, but no results. However, a few weeks later, I finally got a reply from to one of the emails I had sent to the production staff. The reply was to one of the emails I had written that hinted more strongly at the reality of what I had seen as a kid. The responses was short and curt, but gave me a new hope of finding answers. Hello, sorry for the late response. but I read between the lines of your message, and you seem what I think you are hinting at. You need to look at the Lost Media Group. That's all I'm going to say on the subject. I googled Lost Media Group, and the closest thing I could find was a website on the online club called the Lost Media Society. It was a site for media enthusiasts to collect, trade, sell, buy, and discuss lost media, including lost episodes, as in real lost episodes that simply never aired. Not the urban legend ones that contain surreal, disturbing, or even supernatural content. This community was interesting on its own right, and I became involved in it. Eventually, even became a site moderator once I established a respected regular. I decided to PM one of the head admins and ask them about the last episode legend. He responded that he had heard of it, but it wasn't really something the site dealt with. He recalled that in the past he had been talked about some had even suggested banning discussions about it since it seems as a spam topic. After a while, I asked if he knew about the organization called the Lost Media Group. He said he had heard of it, but no one knows anything about it, and suggested that I contact a certain other admin who did know more about this entity. I messaged this admin and got a response within an hour. He told me the Lost Media Group was a group alleged by some to be behind the lost episodes phenomenon. According to him, they produced not just an altered version of the movie and television episodes, but were also said to make their own versions of their media, such as video games, comic books. He said he did not know much about them, but when they had some lost media collectors who were willing to pay large sums of their authentic work by their group, and that before the Lost Media Society had banned discussions of the lost episode legends, some of those collectors had asked him about the site. I asked if he could rather refer to I asked if he could refer me to such a collector. He said to my best bet it would be a certain retired site admin who was no longer active at the Lost Media Society. He linked me to a couple of archive drives to this individual asking about the lost episodes and gave me the man's email address. I shot him an email asking about interest about his interest in lost episodes, and even went as far as to directly ask him if he knew about the lost episode type version of the Astro Cats Part 3. A few months went by with no response. During this time, I researched as much as I could about the lost episodes. I found out about the other alleged lost episodes of Flintstones. The story behind the lost episodes was much like the other lost episode stories. A special episodes of the show aired on the otherwise unused television channel and had core and surreal content. The main difference between stories and the others was that there was one that had a somewhat credible outside source. The original form had a link to a digit sole archived local news article from 1979. The FCC had received complaints from a dozen of people claiming to have seen the episode. The complaints came from the lake of Kaba, Kapitogama region of Minnesota, of most originating from a Kawa Pacific Lake resort. These incidents was locally known as the Kapitogama podcast. I decided the next logical step was to contact the FCC for more details. They responded within a week, saying that unfortunately they were not at liberty to give such information at the moment. Considered filing a Freedom of Information Act request, but decided to take a different route. One of the two lakes resorts most heavily involved was still in operation. I scheduled a vacation from work, and a few weeks later, I was on my way to Lake Kapitogama. Black Cove was a collection of 15 cabins and bars, restaurants, and a small boat dock. With the boats available for lease, I had rented an old A-frame and tail unit and planned to stay for 2 weeks. The resort was a nice place to stay. I spent a few days fishing and seeing the local attraction. I fell in with a group of regulars who fish in the resort every year. We went on several boat trips before I had enough courage to ask the oldest of them about the Kapitogama broadcast. Well, the funny thing, I actually just missed out on the whole thing. It happened a week before I stayed here in the summer of '79. I heard a lot about it though. You want to talk to Ed about it? He was there. He was referred to Ed Kleck, the founder and proprietor of Kleck Cove. I had considered asking him about the Kapitogama podcast before. Kapitogama broadcast before, but wanted to fill out the locals first. However, at this point, I decided I was being overly cautious and chose to follow the man's advice. Mr. Kleck was in his late 70s, but his memory was still sharp. I like to tell stories, and I took advantage of this. He liked to tell stories, and I took advantage of this by starting a conversation with him about the history of the resort in the lake. This got him going for a couple of hours before I brought up the Kapitogama broadcast. Now, why do you want to know about that? He asked. Seeming taken aback, I told him I had read about it on the internet and what the story said. He shrugged and said, "Oh well, that's pretty much what happened. Nothing much else. Oh really?" I asked if he had seen the episode, to which he responded that he had caught the end of the broadcast after being told about it as it was happening. He said he saw Barney die a horrific and bloody death in some back Stone Age corruption. But didn't remember much else. He was reluctant to continue the conversation much further, but assured me that the incident was very real indeed. I pondered all I have learned on my drive home. I have been left with more questions than answers, and didn't seem to be getting any closer to track down the Astro Cat last recording. The more I learned, the more new questions came up. Was the disturbing Astro Cat version I have seen connected to the episode drama broadcast? Are the alleged Batman and Robin lost episodes? Or was I making connections that were there? None. Did that person on YouTube just claim that they had seen the Batman lost episode really see it? Or had he just been trolling me? Surely. All those claims couldn't be coincidental. But there was no explanation for this existence of those lost episodes. While I was churning on those informations over in my mind, I didn't notice the vehicles behind me until it was right up on my bumper. I swirled in and made contact and sheared into a ditch. Yet a car drove on without stop. I wasn't injured. In fact, my airbag didn't even deploy, but I sat and thought for many minutes afterwards. But I finally got my bearings. I called 911 and told them my locations based on the nearest mile marker. It took about 45 minutes for state officers to find me. I told the officers that had happened, but wasn't able to provide details such as the make and color of the car that had hit me, or the license plate. I did not tell them of the business, tell them what business I was, or my lingering suspicion that the incident had to do with my investigations of the Capital Gamma broadcast. Despite this experience, I decided to stick my neck a little more. This is getting serious, and I needed a clear picture of what I was up against. I had an acquaintance in the FBI who owed my family a favor of a lifetime. I convinced him over dinner, and I paid for a look into the lost media group for me. A few weeks later, he had a document for me. It was an analyst report containing all the information the FBI had on this mysterious group. The information known as Guru, but the last episode, Lost Media Group, is a sense as to strongly suggest that the group does not really exist. This report exhumes this group of the group for investigative purposes. However, concerning the OMG has been per se and off the records. The exact nature, size, organizations, origins, and goals of the LMG are mysterious and is said to be a multinational organization that has embodied its multiple entertainment industries and is most active in cities with large concentrations of entertainment companies such as Los Angeles, New York City, Atlanta, Toronto, and Tokyo. Membership is by invitation only and is rumored to include a number of wealthy entertainment executives and financiers. Secondhand informant reports that the group uses a variety of criminal tactics, including bribery and blackmail and violence, to prevent the dismemberment of the information concerning them. It is speculated that LMG uses other crimes syndicates as proxies for their operations in order to obfuscate investigations into their activities and that they mislead people into believing they are more powerful than they really are. Claims that the group possesses supernatural powers are likely to result in collective disformation campaign, campaigns. The last media group first came up to the girls' attention during the 1970s, but it says to date back in the early 1990s, during the 1920s and the 1930s, and urban legends emerged concerning the mysterious reels, which were said to be altered version of the syndicated movie figure reels that differed significantly in content from the standard copies. The real believed that the lack of public awareness of the entertainment industry under standard and copyright contributed to the fact that such works were not reported to the media or law enforcement. Every human testimony concerning mysterious reels that they often contain violent content that was more extreme than the mainstream thriller content, and several more former members of censorship tribe that claim to have received complaints about them. Witness also claim that the mystery reels based on live action films feature different actors that those actors in retrospect seem to have been coerced. More witness claim that an actor, a silent, mysterious reel, appeared to be saying "help me" before being silenced by someone off screen. Those claims have been led to the reel believe that the LMG may have been participated in trafficking in human beings. The group is also rumored to have been involved in the production and the distribution of the snuff film, although this is a little evident to support this claim. There is to support this very existence of snuff movies. Other crimes the Lost Media Group is suspected to be involved with included media privacy, drugging of actors, trafficking in endangered species, arrests or use in films, and recording executions for other criminal organizations. By pondering over the reports, memberships, and invitations, only well-founded, well-connected must be well organized. Yet their activity seems nothing short of bizarre. Why would a group of this kind of resources group apparently had, unlike the FBI? I was beginning to take this existence of this lost media group for granted. At this point, not spend them on more traditional and profitable crime activities. Why would this many people commit so many resources and risk so just to make movies? There are no ways such a sophisticated cynic could make enough money off of simply piracy to be considered profitable in the other crimes listed in the reports. It seems beyond the scope of expertise of a cable. Extremely comprised of people in the entertainment industry. Was it not about money and ideological or religious motivation, perhaps? Certainly, it didn't fit any religion I could think of. It didn't seem like they were interested in influencing the election. Their movies must be subtler. They had a message they wanted them, or an influence they wanted to create using the power of mass media, and they were willing to dabble in any number of crimes towards whatever their ultimate end was. So that's the end of part 4. We will be going to part 5 of Lost Episodes Can Be Found. It is a long but very interesting creepypasta. So I'm gonna see you tomorrow. Well, probably tomorrow. Thank you for watching.